Knight comes out to f6 for Magnus, c4. And we have the King's Indian, g6. Knight to c3, bishop g7. Magnus taking a bit of risk by playing this opening. Bishop e2 by Marco. And by the way, Magnus has played this before recently against Arjun Erigaisi at Norway Chess. In the Armageddon, when he had already won the tournament, he went for the same line with knight d7 and a quick e5 before castling. You can see Magnus gets up from the board, removes his jacket there so that he can start moving a bit more fast. Marco goes bishop to e3. And now Magnus pushes his pawn to e5. Knight f3 seems like a normal move, but he pushes ahead with d5. The knight jumps to c5. Now you can see the two pieces attacking here on the e4 pawn. You can push f3. You can also play queen c2, thereby keeping this diagonal open for the white bishop. How does Magnus continue here? He can play a5, which is a very typical move, stopping b4. He can also castle here, which looks fine. h5, h4, also sometimes an idea in such positions. Bit surprised that Magnus is the one who started to think. He goes knight g4. He wants this bishop. Now, Marco can of course save the bishop with bishop d2, but he decides to chop off the knight. And why not? Because the bishop on e2 was not particularly a great piece for white. You can now put f3. That's exactly what he does. In that way, you have all your pawns on light squares and the remaining bishop is a dark squared bishop. Magnus now comes back, bishop to c8. And Marco can finish his development. Knight e2. He can be very careful with knight e2 and castles, but he can also be very aggressive by playing long castle. b4 played. He pushes the knight back. And now knight e2. a5 played by Magnus. And with this move, Marco either has to push the pawn, which gives up the c5 square, or has to take on a5 and then knight c1, knight b3, followed by a4, a5. These are the plans in the position. Marco is thinking here what to do. He takes, b takes on a5. And Magnus now goes short castle. He doesn't try to recover the pawn just yet. And white also short castles here. I like white's position, by the way, because once you get knight c1, knight b3, you have c5 incoming, also a4, a5 incoming, whereas black's f5 is not like something that's going to reap any inroads very soon. He takes the pawn. And Marco has 1 minute 35 seconds. Magnus has 1 minute 59. Knight goes to c1. The knight would like to come to b3. And he goes pawn to f5. He pushes forward, knight to b3 played, attacking the rook. The rook comes back to a6. Now once the rook comes here, you can push the pawn forward. Pawn to c5 looks like a great move, because then you have the knight here, the bishop here. Looks perfect. But Marco is taking a lot of time. He's just being, of course, facing Magnus is not easy. He's trying to make sure that he doesn't blunder something, but needs to trust his instincts. Being low on time is not good for him. He's now down under a minute on the clock. Go for it, Marco. Come on. Yes, pawn to c5. Good move by him. He's playing really well. 17 moves in. He has a small edge against Magnus. Magnus takes, pawn takes pawn. You take back with the knight, of course. He takes, knight takes. Magnus takes. Bishop takes, attacks the rook. Rook comes up to f7. And now, how do you make progress is the question. You could play a4, a5. That's an idea here. He brings his rook a to d1. That's a nice move. Maybe at some point he can get the pawn to d6 break in. Magnus goes bishop d7. He finishes his development. All his pieces are out in the open. And now queen to b3. Eyeing the b7 pawn. Also eyeing some stuff on this diagonal here. b6 now cuts off the rook in this rank. So the bishop can drop back and then d6 becomes a realistic idea. He comes back bishop e3 Marco here. But now Magnus can take over this diagonal with his bishop. He does that. He can put his bishop on d6. a4 played here. a4 does prepare knight to b5. That's a very nice square for the knight. Magnus's position doesn't feel like very harmonious. What's the rook doing on a6? What's the rook doing on f7? The bishops are not also performing their duty. But of course the position is not bad at all. Queen e8. Wow, Magnus looks at this pawn as a weakness and goes after it. Knight b5 is maybe possible, but rook a1 played. I think that makes a lot of sense. He's defending the a pawn, and now next move can go knight b5. Rook comes to a5, stopping the move knight b5 there. E takes f5, taken by Marco. That's a risky move. He's now isolated his d5 pawn, also given black two central mobile pawns, but these pawns can become weak. Rook e1, a good move there. And now Magnus can bring his bishop out to d6. 28 seconds for Marco, 30 seconds for Magnus Carlsen. The pressure is mounting. He moves his queen away, queen to d8. I'm keeping my eyes open for any tactics on this diagonal. They are not coming in as of now. Knight to b5 played because the queen has moved away. Marco being so alert here. Knight b5, I love this move. And Magnus, well, he's thinking. He takes first on b5, ab, takes on a1, rook a1 taken. And now bishop to d6. Suddenly black's position looks very harmonious. That's what Magnus does. He gets rid of his bad pieces and leaves himself with good ones. The queen looks here and here. Magnus goes queen f6. The rook comes in with a check. King g7. And now Marco only has 15 seconds. He goes queen to c6. He's coming in here. Queen e8. Is Magnus's king weak? Are there tactics coming in? Magnus looking for some e4, f4 stuff. He goes f4. Bishop goes back to d2. That's a mistake because bishop will get this diagonal. He had to go back bishop f2. And now queen c1 trying to stop queen b1 ideas. But the queen enters in nonetheless. Suddenly white is very passive. Magnus has taken over like he always does. Queen takes d5 is taken a pawn. The rook is attacked. Rook goes to c8. Almost falls off the board. Queen takes b5. The second pawn goes away. But queen e1. He's trying to enter in from this side. Queen attacks the rook. The rook goes back to a8. He comes in with the queen to f5. But now queen h4. Bishop e7. And he quickly comes back to even check king h2. And bishop d4. The queen comes back to h4. And now Magnus goes queen g6. Is there some hope for Marco? He goes bishop e1. If he can get rook e8 and queen d8, it would be amazing. He has this chance. But he goes queen d8. Rook e8 was amazing move. But very difficult to spot. Queen f6. And even though there's a check here, the king moves up. And the king is safe. Bishop comes out. Oh, Magnus could take the bishop there. It was a mate. But he doesn't. He's still better. Take here. And now Magnus is 2 pawns up. Rook goes to c6. Wow. That was some really intense time pressure stuff which Magnus navigated expertly. He could have fallen into pressure, fallen in trouble. King comes up. Is there some sort of a mate? Not really. The king on h5 is as safe as one could be. Bishop e7. He pushes the pawns to c3. And now b5 comes forward. The bishop comes back. And now he takes the pawn. Magnus is 2 pawns up, so he's not afraid of any trades. Takes, rook takes. And now rook to b6, putting his rook behind the passer. And b4 comes. And Marco, well, he's lost on time and he resigns there. Ooh, look at the nerves there. I'm pretty sure this was a great experience for the youngster. He had Magnus really under pressure until a point, but Magnus showing his class and was sharp as one could be. With this win, Magnus starts off on a winning note at the World Blitz Championships. Marco, well, I'm pretty sure we're going to hear his name a lot in the years to come.